President Trump's budget proposal eliminates the $300 million Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, as well as funding for other programs that aim to combat pollution, restore wetlands, and oversee other improvements on the Great Lakes. Legislators from around the region have expressed outrage. The impact of these budget cuts has been the focus of Troubled Waters, a week-long series from Great Lakes Today. It is a collaboration between WBFO Buffalo, WXXI Rochester, and IdeaStream. Great Lakes Today reporter Elizabeth Miller is here today to tell us more. Good to see you, Liz.
Good to see you.
The whole idea of the budget slashing it did infuriate a lot of people, but you've got 5 stories to talk about the things going on in the Great Lakes. Some have aired already, some have not. How did you decide which issues you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, so we looked outside of the scope of Great Lakes Today, which is mainly BFO in Buffalo, Rochester, and Cleveland, to go all the way, starting all the way at the west at Lake Superior, which is where we focused on cleaning up water contaminants, or contaminants in the water. And then from there we went to Michigan, focusing on Asian carp. Lake Erie, the algae bloom problem was our focus there. In Lake Huron, the issue was removing aging dams, and then ending the series in Lake Ontario, where they're trying to restore the lake sturgeon population. So with a few of the lakes, the issue to focus on was clear. Lake Erie, algae blooms. Right. Lake Michigan, Asian carp, because their main channel to get into the Great Lakes is through Lake Michigan via the Mississippi River. And then the other 3 stories, they're specific to those lakes, but they also are issues that are all over the region. So with the Lake Superior story, we're focusing on the St. Louis River, which, like the Cuyahoga here in Cleveland, has an industrial past. With Lake Michigan, the story is about dam removals. Now, the whole state of Michigan has about 2,400 to 2,600 dams, and a lot of those, 80% of them, are reaching the end of their life by 2020.
That's a huge number.
Yeah, so they're aging and they're really in jeopardy there. And so with Lake Ontario, the Lake Sturgeon issue is also something that Wisconsin and Ohio received federal money for too.
Now, your particular story that aired was on the Ohio Sea Grant, and of course the algal blooms being the big story here in Lake Erie. Are we learning new things now?
Yeah, so after the Toledo water crisis in 2014, the Ohio Sea Grant really focused in on the algae blooms and the harmful algae blooms with about more than 50 projects over the last 2 years. These initiatives, this research is focused on tracking the blooms, looking at human health impacts, looking at water treatment, and also educating farmers and the public about algae blooms. Chris Winslow, the director of Ohio Sea Grant, spoke with me about a couple of the harmful algae bloom questions that still need to be answered when it comes to human health. Here's what he had to say.
We know that this is a liver toxin. It's called a hepatotoxin or a liver toxin. We know that that's what it causes, but we don't know, is it a carcinogen or not? If you get exposed to it, how do you know?
So in my story, I focused on 2 specific projects of those more than 50. The first one was looking at fish consumption advisories. So how many walleye, how many perch should we be eating during harmful algae bloom season? And so there are some researchers who looked at that. The other research is focused on vegetables. So what if you water your vegetables with toxin-contaminated water? What does that do to your lettuce, your green beans, and your carrots? I mean, the result is it's not safe to eat, of course, but it also doesn't look pretty. The vegetables don't look the same, and it really affects the farmer's crop yield.
Part of the reason why Washington was ready to cut this is because they said that the programs like the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative largely benefit business and industry, not so much people. What did the folks that you've interviewed have to say in response to that?
Well, throughout the whole series, people in these environmental organizations say that having federal money leverages state and local money. So it actually kind of gets the ball rolling on some of these projects that affect people all over the Great Lakes region. For a few agencies, I actually looked at what states receive the most money from the GLRI, and a lot of the funding is going to multi-state projects. So that's more than just one state, it's all 8 of them.
And lastly, the proposed budget came out last month. What's happened since then?
Not much. Everyone from environmental advocacy organizations and scientists have been talking to their congresspeople and talking about the value of their work. Here's what Chris Winslow of Ohio Sea Grant had to say about that.
It's not hard to go to the Hill and argue the stuff you're doing. The numbers that we have to back up, the impacts on charter captain industry, our ability to help the tourism industry out, the marinas, love that we're there helping them clean up their operations. Or there are tons of stakeholders out there that I know that are writing letters saying, Sea Grant touched my life.
Obviously, still more reporting to do. You guys will be on top of it, of course, and we'll have you come back when there is movement.
All right.
Elizabeth Miller, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, for more on all things lake-related, of course, including its importance for commerce and recreation, join us for the second stop on the Sound of Ideas Community Tour. This show is set for next Tuesday, June 20th at 5:30. It'll be held at the Sandusky Library. We'll have residents and lake experts on hand. We'd love to hear what's on the community's mind, so come share your thoughts, and of course, it's free.